that have since melted and released the cries of exotic beasts brought to the Colosseum to be slaughtered by gladiators. That I had a place in all of that I could not escape my place in all of that, was what I found most astonishing. Caesar's ending was also a beginning. His was among the first recorded autopsies, which is how we know that he was stabbed 23 times. The iron daggers are gone. His blood-soaked toga is gone. The curia of Pompeii, in which he was killed, is gone, and the metropolis in which it stood exists only as ruins. The Roman Empire, which once covered 2 million square miles and encompassed more than 20% of the world's population, and whose disappearance was as unimaginable as that of the planet itself, is gone. It's hard to think of a more ephemeral artifact of a civilization than a breath, but it's impossible to think of a more enduring one. Despite my recalling so much about it, there was no Book of Endings. When I tried to confirm its existence, I found instead Panatti's extraordinary endings of practically everything and everybody, published when I was 12. It contains Houdini, the fossil record, and many other things that I remembered, but not Caesar's final breath, and not the dispute with the soul, which I must have learned about elsewhere. Those small corrections troubled me, not because they were themselves important, but because my recollections were so clear. I was further unsettled when I researched the first suicide note and reflected on its title, on the fact that it was titled at all. That we misremember is disturbing enough, but the prospect of being misremembered by those who come after us is deeply upsetting. It remains unknown whether the author of the first suicide note even killed himself. I opened my mouth to my soul, he writes in the beginning, but the soul has the last word, urging the man to cling to life. We don't know how the man responded. It's entirely possible that the dispute with the soul resolved with the choice of life, postponing the author's last breath. Perhaps a confrontation with death revealed the most compelling case for survival. A suicide note resembles nothing more closely than its opposite. No sacrifice. During World War II, Americans in cities along the East Coast turned off their lights at dusk. They weren't themselves in imminent danger. The purpose of the blackout was to prevent German U-boats from using urban backlighting to spot and destroy ships exiting harbor. As the war progressed, blackouts were practiced in cities across the country, even those far from the coast, to immerse civilians in a conflict whose horrors were out of sight, but whose victory would require collective action. On the home front, Americans needed a reminder that life as they knew it could be destroyed, and darkness was one way to illuminate the threat. Civil Air Patrol pilots were encouraged to comb the skies above the Midwest for enemy aircraft, despite the fact that no German fighter plane of the era was capable of flying that far. Solidarity was an important asset, even if such gestures would have been foolish, would have been suicidal, if they were the only efforts made. World War II would not have been won without home-front actions that had both psychological and tangible impacts. Ordinary people joining together to support the greater cause. During the war, industrial productivity rose by 96%. Liberty ships that took 8 months to construct at the start of the war were completed in weeks. The SS Robert E. Perry, a Liberty ship composed of 250,000 parts weighing 14 million pounds, was assembled in 4.5 days. By 1942, companies that had once manufactured cars, refrigerators, metal office furniture, and washing machines now produced military products. Lingerie factories began making camouflage netting, adding machines were reborn as pistols, and the lung-like bags of vacuum cleaners were transplanted into the bodies of gas masks. Retirees, women, and students entered the workforce. Many states changed their labor laws to allow teenagers to work. Everyday commodities like rubber, tin cans, aluminum foil, and lumber were collected for reuse in the war effort. Hollywood studios contributed by producing newsreels, anti-fascist features, and patriotic animated films. Celebrities encouraged the purchase of war bonds, and a few, like Julia Child, became spies. Congress enlarged the tax base by lowering the minimum taxable income and reducing personal exemptions and deductions. In 1940, 10% of American workers paid federal income tax. By 1944, the number approached 100%. Top marginal tax rates were raised to 94%.